As she walked through the garden of the mansion, an employee found an old bag among the bushes. What she saw when she opened the bag left her completely horrified. Marisol began her day at the mansion as usual, sweeping the wide corridors with dedication, dressed in her simple yet impeccable uniform. She moved with an efficiency she had perfected over months of working there. As she cleaned, her thoughts wandered. How lucky I am to be here, she thought. Many would fight for an opportunity like this. Marisol came from a humble family where every day was a struggle. This job was her lifeline, not only for herself, but also for her family, who often needed financial assistance. Marisol's boss, Dalia, was unlike anyone Marisol had met before. Rich, yes, but with a kindness that transcended the economic difference between them. One beautiful day, while the sun was shining, Dalia approached Marisol with a soft smile as she polished the family portraits in the living room. "Marisol, dear, have you seen my agenda? I left it around here and can't find it," Dalia said, looking around visibly lost. Marisol stopped what she was doing and thought for a moment. "I think I saw it in the library, ma'am. I'll go get it for you," she replied, already prepared to help. "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll find it, but thank you." "Marisol, I don't know what I would do without you here," Dalia replied with a smile as she walked away. Marisol felt a wave of pride and gratitude. It wasn't just about the job, it was about the mutual respect they shared. She knew it was rare, especially in her position. Despite her luck, Marisol always knew she wanted more from life than what destiny seemed to have in store for her. Growing up in a poor neighborhood of a small city, she witnessed her family's daily struggle just to survive. From a young age, she dreamed of the glitz and luxury of the lives she saw in magazines and on television. She imagined escaping that reality, dressed in the finest clothes, attending elegant events, and, most importantly, not having to worry about whether she would have enough to eat the next day. Marisol was smart and determined, but her opportunities were limited by the reality of her economic situation. Even in her teens, she knew that to change her destiny, she needed to leave her city and risk it all for a chance at success in the big city. "Someday," she used to murmur to herself, "I'll show them all that I can be someone." When she finally made the difficult decision to move, Marisol was filled with hope. But the big city wasn't the fairy tale she had imagined. Opportunities were scarce, and the competition was intense. She found herself facing repeated rejections, each one a harsh blow to her confidence. The reality of living alone, far from family and friends, began to weigh on her. "Maybe I made a mistake," she often thought, battling the loneliness and desperation that threatened to consume her. But Marisol didn't give up easily. She persisted, taking temporary jobs and doing whatever it took to survive. It was during this difficult period that the opportunity to work at the mansion arose. Although it wasn't the type of success she had dreamed of, it was a stable job opportunity, and she grabbed it with both hands. "It's only temporary," she convinced herself, seeing it as a stepping stone to her bigger ambitions. Working at the mansion was a revelation for Marisol. She saw up close the luxurious life she had always desired, but she also witnessed the complications and loneliness that can accompany such wealth. Her relationship with Dalia, in particular, offered her a new perspective. Despite her wealth, Dalia showed genuine kindness and concern for those around her, something Marisol hadn't expected to find in someone of her position. These experiences began to shape Marisol's dreams and ambitions in ways she hadn't anticipated. She still aspired to more in life, but her definitions of success and happiness began to change. "Maybe there's more to life than just being rich," Marisol thought as she cleaned the rooms and corridors of the mansion. She began to value her friendships more and the satisfaction of a job well done, even if that job wasn't what she had dreamed for herself. However, Marisol wasn't the only one facing difficulties in that mansion. She had also discovered something painful that the wealthy couple avoided discussing. One ordinary day at work, moved by a delicate curiosity and the closeness that had grown between them, she decided to ask her boss about something that had always intrigued her. "Mrs. Dalia, if you don't mind me asking, I've always wanted to know one thing. Why don't you have children?" Marisol asked hesitantly, fearing she had touched an open wound. Dalia paused for a moment, her gaze distant as if gathering strength to revisit a painful memory. She sighed deeply before starting to share her story. "We had a daughter once, Dalia began, her voice low with emotion. A beautiful girl, perfectly healthy at birth, but we lost her, Marisol. She passed away in her crib in the maternity ward due to a natural condition, a sudden complication of the heart. Marisol felt a wave of sadness at hearing those words. She approached, offering a supportive hand. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Dalia. I can't even imagine how difficult it must have been for you both. Dalia accepted Marisol's hand, a slight sad smile forming on her lips. It was devastating, dear, and the hardest part was accepting that there was nothing we could have done to prevent it. Sometimes life presents us with these tragedies to face, but it also teaches us about the strength we didn't know we had. Dalia's sincerity and vulnerability deeply moved Marisol. You're very strong, Mrs. Dalia, and very brave for sharing this with me, Marisol said. Feeling a mix of admiration and compassion, Dalia nodded slightly, thanking Marisol for her empathy. We try to move on, Marisol, and that's why the presence of people like you, who bring so much light and life to this house, means so much to us. You're part of our family now. Marisol smiled gratefully at Dalia, trying to continue the conversation delicately. How long has it been since then? It still seems quite recent, she asked softly, not wanting to seem intrusive, but moved by genuine concern. Almost a year now, Dalia replied, her voice adamant. It feels like yesterday, and yet like a lifetime ago. Her gaze drifted for a moment, captured by themery of the daughter she never had the chance to know. Marisol, feeling the depth of Dalia's loss, ventured with another delicate question. Have you thought about trying again? Maybe not now, but trying to have another child in the future? Dalia sighed, a mixture of sadness and hope in her gaze. We have thought about it, but I'm still not ready. What happened has left us too afraid to face the same pain again. We need more time to heal, to maybe one day be ready to try again. Her honesty revealed the complexity of her feelings, a desire to move forward combined with the fear of reliving the pain. Marisol felt understanding. I understand, Mrs. Dalia, and whatever you decide, do what you think is best for both of you. She offered a warm smile, trying to convey support and solidarity. Dalia returned the smile, feeling grateful for Marisol's understanding and support. Thank you, dear. Your presence is a comfort to us, especially to me. Now I think it's best we get back to work, she said with a playful smile before returning to their tasks. As Marisol also returned to her duties, her mind was filled with thoughts about the conversation they had just had. She reflected on the complexity of life, on how each person carries their own sorrows and struggles, visible or not. In the weeks following that conversation, Marisol and Dalia found comfort in each other, sharing moments that strengthened their friendship. One of their favorite pastimes was taking walks together in the forest surrounding the mansion. These walks were an opportunity for them to escape from their daily worries and distract themselves together. On a quiet afternoon while walking among the trees, Dalia started a light conversation, showing genuine interest in Marisol's life outside the mansion. How's your family? Marisol, you mentioned your sister was getting ready to try for college. Has she decided what she's going to study? Marisol lit up at the question, always happy to share her family's achievements, especially when it came to her younger sister. Yes, she's decided on engineering. We're all very proud of her, you know. She's always been incredibly good with numbers and problem solving. I think she'll do very well. I hope she does well on the scholarship exam. That's wonderful to hear. Education is so important, and it's great to know that she has the support of her family. Support at times like these makes all the difference. Thank you, Dalia. It means a lot to me to hear that from you. You know, sometimes it's hard being away from them, but knowing that I'm contributing to her future makes it all worthwhile. You're part of our family now, Marisol. I hope you know that. Thank you. You and Matías have been incredible to me. I feel very fortunate to be here. These flowers will look beautiful in my room. I noticed that mine are withered. Could you find some tulips for me? I think there should be more ahead on the path, of course. Marisol, ready to help, then walked away along the path, leaving Dalia behind with the flowers she had chosen. As Marisol walked, the calm of the forest enveloped her senses, allowing her a moment of quiet reflection. She admired the natural beauty around her, appreciating the peace that these walks always provided. It was a welcome contrast to the busy routine of the mansion. Then suddenly, an unexpected sound caught her attention. A faint, almost drowned-out cry amidst the natural ambience. It made Marisol stop in her tracks, furrowing her brow in confusion as she tried to identify the source of the sound. A baby here? The idea seemed so out of place that for a moment she doubted her own ears. But the crying continued, now a little louder, dispelling any doubts from her mind. Driven by a sense of urgency, Marisol followed the sound, her heart pounding fast with anxiety. She moved carefully among the trees until she finally found the source of the crying, hidden under the dense shade of a tree. An old bag, abandoned in such a way that it almost blended with the surroundings. Marisol approached slowly, holding her breath as the reality of the situation began to dawn on her. Upon opening the bag, she found, to her astonishment, a baby girl looking up at her with big, frightened eyes, but seemingly unharmed. For a moment, Marisol stood frozen, incredulous at what her eyes were seeing. "How is this possible?" she murmured to herself, looking around for someone who could explain the situation. But the forest offered only silence. Filled with compassion and determination, Marisol knew she couldn't leave the baby there. She took the girl in her arms, promising to take care of her, even though she didn't yet know how she would fulfill that promise. Now, with the baby safe in her arms, Marisol noticed a piece of paper folded inside the bag. Her curiosity and concern prompted her to take it with her free hand. On the paper, she found a handwritten note, its words conveying desperation and regret. "I'm so sorry for this. I know I did wrong, but now I have no choice. Please take good care of her." The words were simple but carried immense emotional weight, leaving Marisol with an even greater sense of urgency. With the note still firmly in one hand and the baby cradled in the other, Marisol hurried back to her employer. Marisol's concern was not only for the baby's well-being, but also for the impact that this news would have on her employer, especially considering the loss she herself had suffered. As she approached Dalia, her voice trembling slightly, she called out, "Dalia, please, you need to see this." Dalia, sensing the urgency in Marisol's voice and seeing the baby in her arms, let a look of surprise take over her face. "Marisol, what happened? Where did this baby come from?" The questions arose as she tried to process the sight before her. Marisol quickly explained, handing the note to Dalia to read for herself. Dalia read the note, her hands trembling slightly as she absorbed the words filled with desperation. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still, as the two women shared a gaze laden with emotion. The decision of what to do next weighed heavily on them. After a moment of deep reflection, Dalia looked at Marisol and then at the baby in her arms. "We can't leave her alone. We need to take care of her, at least until we figure out what to do." Her voice was firm. Marisol felt immense relief with Dalia's response. Together, they walked back to the mansion, scared but determined. However, a concern suddenly began to grow in Marisol's heart. She knew that Dalia's husband, Matías, would also have something to say about the situation. With hesitation in her voice, she finally expressed her concern. "Dalia, what will Matías think about this?" The question floated between them, laden with anxiety and uncertainty about the reaction they might face. Dalia, who until that moment had been immersed in her own thoughts, paused for a moment, considering the question. "I don't know, Marisol, but we have to tell him. We have to do it together." Her voice revealed a mixture of determination and nervousness. The relationship between Dalia and Matías had always been based on honesty and mutual support, but this situation was extraordinary, and she couldn't predict how he would react. When they arrived at the mansion, they found Matías in his study, immersed in his work. Upon seeing the two of them enter so abruptly, he immediately realized that something was wrong. "What happened? Are you both okay, Marisol?" "But what is this?" he asked, the concern evident in his expression as she noticed the baby in Marisol's arms. Dalia took the lead, explaining quickly about finding the baby in the forest and handing him the note. Matías read the words with a growingly serious expression, his shock and surprise increasing with each word. After a moment of silence, he looked up to gaze at the two women before him. "This is unbelievable. It's okay. We can't just abandon the baby, but we also can't ignore the fact that she was abandoned. Someone committed a crime." He took a deep breath, trying to maintain composure in the face of the unexpected situation. "We will take care of her, of course, but we need to do the right thing and take this to the police." They need to know what happened, and perhaps they can find her family. His voice was firm, but there was an underlying gentleness, a hint of his own emotional turmoil as he faced the idea of temporarily caring for the baby. Marisol and Dalia exchanged glances, finding some relief in Matías's response despite their own apprehensions. There was comfort in the idea of doing right by the baby. That night, the mansion was enveloped in an atmosphere of care and concern as Marisol and Dalia attended to the baby's immediate needs. Marisol, with innate efficiency, hurried to get diapers and everything else a small baby might need, while Dalia carefully prepared the bottle. Together, they bathed the baby, using clothes that had been bought with hope and love for the daughter Dalia never got to know. Each gesture was laden with bittersweet feelings, a mixture of pain for the loss and tenderness for the life they had found. After tending to her with all the care, they placed the baby to rest in the crib in a room that had been prepared with so much love and anticipation. It was a scene that evoked deep emotions, especially for Dalia, who saw before her what could have been, and now, unexpectedly, seemed to have returned to her, if only for a brief moment. They agreed that Matías would take the baby to the police station the next morning in an attempt to unravel the mystery behind her sudden appearance. But as the night progressed and the house fell silent, Dalia found herself restless, unable to surrender to sleep. The concern and curiosity about the baby's future consumed her, leading her to rise and silently walk to the baby's room. There, Dalia watched the baby sleep peacefully in the crib. There was something in that scene that touched her heart deeply, arousing a wave of emotions that she thought she had buried. Tears welled up in her eyes as she gazed at the little girl, feeling an instant and overwhelming love, as if somehow she were her own daughter lying there. It was a moment of revelation for Dalia, a connection that transcended any logic or rationalization. Unable to surrender to sleep, concern and curiosity about the future of that girl consumed her, leading her to rise and walk silently to the baby's room. There, Dalia observed the baby sleeping peacefully in the crib. There was something about that scene that deeply touched her heart, stirring a wave of emotions she thought she had buried. Tears welled up in her eyes as she gazed at the little girl, feeling an instant and overwhelming love, as if somehow that was her own daughter lying there. It was then that Matías, noticing Dalia's absence beside him in bed, decided to search for his wife. He found her in the baby's room, standing silently, a solitary figure in the darkness. Approaching her from behind, he enveloped her in his arms, offering wordless comfort. They remained there, sharing the moment of stillness and contemplation, united not only by their love for each other, but also by their common care for a girl who had entered their lives in such an unusual way. As Dalia admired the girl, she became increasingly consumed by sadness and fear of losing the baby, who, in such a short time, she had already begun to consider part of her family. Matías, firm but gentle, tried to comfort Dalia, though he also struggled with his own conflicting feelings. Dalia looked at him, eyes filled with tears, Herman tormented by the idea that the girl might not be safe with her own family. The worry was evident in every word, every gesture, as she wrestled with the idea of parting from the baby. Matías, feeling the weight of his own doubts and fears, knew there were no easy answers. Dalia embraced Dalia once more, sharing their pain and their desire to care for the baby. The next morning, as Dalia and Matías made their way to the police station with the baby, Marisol stayed behind at the mansion, attending to her usual tasks. However, the routine failed to fully capture her attention. Her thoughts were with the baby, with Dalia and Matías, and mainly with the mystery surrounding the baby's abandonment. Upon reaching the forest, Marisol began to carefully inspect the area around where the bag had been found, searching for any signs that might indicate where the person who left the baby might have entered or exited the property. Frustration began to set in as the reality of her solitary search became evident. Every broken branch, every footprint could be a clue, but it could also simply be an employee passing by. Marisol continued along the path with a mixture of determination and curiosity, venturing beyond the bounds of her usual walks with Dalia. The path led her to a part of the wall that was unfamiliar to her, a forgotten section consumed by time, where the wall bore a much older and more worn appearance than the parts near the mansion. There, she found an old gate, almost completely hidden by the dense vegetation clinging to it. Approaching it, Marisol noticed a gap at the base of the gate, a narrow opening that seemed to have been made by some impact from the outside. It was large enough for someone slender to pass through. On the other side, the terrain continued to extend into more forest, suggesting that whoever had left the baby might have come from there. When she finally saw Dalia and Matías return with the baby, a tremendous relief washed over her. Matías, holding the baby carefully, responded with a calm but firm voice. "They're going to do a DNA analysis." Marisol nodded in understanding before quickly changing the subject to her own discovery. Marisol felt a pang of disappointment, but she knew Matías was right. Dalia looked at her reassuringly. "And you have, dear. Just knowing we have people like you by our side is a great comfort." After days of uncertainty and a routine momentarily disrupted by the presence of the baby, life in Dalia and Matías' mansion began to return to its normal course. They decided for the time being to set aside the matter, focusing on caring for the child. 3 days later, an unexpected call shattered the calm that had settled. Matías answered the phone, and the voice on the other end belonged to a police officer requesting his presence at the station for the advancement of the investigation. After a brief conversation with Dalia, they decided she would stay home, taking care of the baby with Marisol's help, while Matías attended to the police call. At the police station, Matías was greeted by an officer who led him to a more secluded room. The officer began the conversation with a delicacy that Matías found strange. "Mr. Matías, before we continue, I'd like to know if you and your wife have had children before," the officer asked, casting a look that mixed professionalism with a touch of sympathy. Matías, a bit confused by the direction of the conversation, replied, "Yes, we had a daughter, but she passed away shortly after birth, still in the maternity ward." The memory was still painful, and talking about it didn't get any easier with time. It was then that the officer revealed the purpose of the conversation, the reason for asking. "The reason I asked, Mr. Matías, is that during our investigation and after the DNA analysis of the found baby, we discovered something, to say the least, unexpected. We suggest a paternity test be conducted since there is a significant possibility that this girl is your supposedly deceased daughter." Matías felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "How is that possible? It can't be. I saw her in her crib, not breathing," he stammered, confusion and shock mixing in his words. The officer continued, "We understand this is hard to believe, but the evidence suggests there may have been an error, or worse, fraud, at the maternity ward. The baby's DNA matches what would be expected of your biological daughter and your wife, who was registered as deceased." Returning home, Matías felt each step heavy, as if he carried not only the weight of his own emotions, but also the uncertain future unfolding before him. Upon entering the house, he found Dalia and Marisol caring for the baby, a picture of tranquility that violently contrasted with the storm within him. "Dalia, we need to talk," Matías began, his voice trembling, revealing the magnitude of what he was about to share. Dalia looked at him, immediately realizing that something was deeply wrong. Marisol, sensing the tension in the air, held the baby closer, a silent witness to the moment that would change their lives. Matías recounted everything he had discovered at the police station, every word laden with a mixture of disbelief and hope. "The police believe this could be our daughter, Dalia. The daughter we thought we had lost." The words seemed to hang in the room, heavy and yet so fragile. The news unleashed a wave of emotions among them, hope, fear, and uncertainty about what the future held. But there was also a glimmer of optimism, a chance to restore what had been lost, to reclaim a terrible loss was an incredible idea. The next day, Matías underwent the test, and a week later, he received the result. It was confirmed that the abandoned baby was indeed Valeria, the daughter Dalia and Matías believed they had lost. The news brought an overwhelming mix of relief, happiness, and several other emotions. The reality of having Valeria back in their arms was both a miracle and a mystery that needed to be unraveled. When Matías shared the latest discoveries with Dalia and Marisol, the conversation quickly focused on the motive behind the baby switch at the maternity ward. How could this have happened and why? Why would someone do something like this? Matías asked, his voice filled with disbelief and a burning desire for answers. Dalia, holding Valeria closer, struggled to process the news. "Someone did this intentionally, but I can't understand the motive. What would someone gain from swapping our daughter? For the welfare of the child who had been left in her place, Marisol offered her suggestion. Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe something more sinister. Maternity must have records, some way to discover it. Besides, there's the note, as if someone had made the switch intentionally. The conversation then turned towards future actions. Matías, determined to protect his family and clarify the situation, said, "Let's press the police to investigate the maternity. We need answers, not just for us, but for the other family involved." Dalia, with tears in her eyes but with a newfound determination in her gaze, agreed. "What we have to do now is wait. We need to be patient. At some point, everything will be clarified." That moment came faster than they expected. A few days later, Matías felt the weight of anxiety when once again the phone rang, taking him back to the police station. Upon arrival, he was greeted by the same serious-looking officer as before, whose expression indicated the gravity of the information about to be shared. The officer began bluntly, "We have identified the person responsible for the baby switch. A woman named Belinda was interrogated and confessed to the act." The information hit Matías like a punch, momentarily leaving him breathless. The name Belinda meant nothing to him, but the reality that someone had intentionally swapped Valeria, his daughter, was almost impossible to comprehend. Belinda told us that her daughter died while being breastfed. In a moment of absolute desperation, before anyone could realize the tragedy, she switched her baby with another at the maternity ward, in this case, your daughter, the officer explained. The officer's explanation was clear, but the motivation behind such an act, although rooted in desperation, was difficult for Matías to fully grasp. The need to understand why these actions occurred led Matías to request a meeting with Belinda. "I need to talk to her. I need to have a conversation with that woman," he said, his voice firm despite the conflicting emotions he felt. Hours later, with the permission to visit in hand, Matías entered the hospital, his heart heavy with anticipation for the encounter. "Belinda," Matías began, his voice soft, trying not to overwhelm the sick woman. "I came to talk about my daughter, about what happened at the maternity ward a year ago. Do you remember what you did?" His approach was careful, mindful of Belinda's condition. Belinda, with effort, turned her face towards him, her voice weak and trembling with the pain of a lifetime of struggles. "You didn't expect to meet me in person. It's truly a surprise, but at least I can ask for forgiveness in a more appropriate manner. Not that I expect to be forgiven. You came to ask for explanations, didn't you? Well, there's not much to say. I'm a lonely woman, and my daughter was all I had. When she died in my arms, something inside me broke," she confessed, her words laden with despair and sadness. Matías listened to Belinda's confession. He felt a whirlwind of emotions. "I can imagine the pain you felt. It's truly painful to lose a child, to lose a part of yourself," Matías admitted, his voice choked with empathy for Belinda. Belinda continued her story, each word tinged with pain and guilt. "I cared for her with all the love and affection I had, as if she were my own daughter. She was the light of my days, the little miracle that kept me alive." Her voice, though weak, vibrated with the strength of the unconditional love she felt for the girl she knew wasn't hers. "But my illness progressed rapidly, and soon it became clear that I didn't have much time left. In my last days, I realized that I could no longer care for her, and I had no one to do it for me." Tears began to form in Belinda's eyes as she recalled the moment of desperation that led her to leave the baby. "I just left her there, as close as possible, hoping that you would find her quickly." Her confession was followed by a heavy silence, a space filled with regret and shared pain. "I'm so sorry," she finally murmured, her gaze pleading for forgiveness. As Matías listened to Belinda's story, he felt a whirlwind of emotions. The initial anger had dissipated, replaced by a profound sadness for Belinda's tragic situation and for the love she had for the baby, even knowing she wasn't hers. "We forgive you, Belinda. Go in peace," he said, his own words surprising him. Belinda, upon hearing Matías' words, allowed herself a small smile, a glimpse of peace amidst the storm of her existence. "Thank you," she whispered, gratitude evident in her voice, a weight being lifted off her shoulders, if only for a moment. "I just wanted her to be safe, loved. Please take good care of her. That's all I ask." Before Matías could respond to Belinda's request, the monitors monitoring her vital signs began to emit an urgent alarm. a sharp sound filling the room. Belinda's heart, marked by pain and despair, was beginning to give in, marking her end. Despite the gravity of the moment, a serene smile adorned her face, as if in her final moments she had found a peace that had been difficult to reach. The medical team rushed into the room, a wave of professionals with serious expressions and precise movements, each assuming their position in an attempt to reverse the inevitable. Matías was gently but firmly guided out of the room, his eyes still fixed on Belinda's peaceful figure. Outside the room, Matías found himself alone in the hospital hallway, the silence abruptly replacing the confusion, the weight of the experience pressing down on him, leaving him stunned by the rapid succession of events. However, even in the midst of it all, he needed to return home, to be with his family, and to explain everything that had happened. Upon returning home, Matías's face bore the marks of someone who had undergone great emotional turmoil, deeply affected by the experience at the hospital. Upon finding Dalia, he shared every detail of the conversation with Belinda, her final words, their quest for forgiveness, and the calmness with which she faced her final moments. The news of Belinda's death brought with it a complexity of feelings that both struggled to comprehend. "Everything will be okay, my love. What matters is that she passed away peacefully and redeemed herself for what she did. Now she's in a better place," Dalia whispered, her own emotions a whirlwind of gratitude, sadness, and compassion for the woman who had so intricately woven their lives together. As they talked about the events, an idea began to take shape between them. Moved by both compassion and the desire to find some closure, Dalia suggested, "Maybe we should honor Belinda's memory, somehow thank her for taking care of Valeria, even considering the circumstances." Initially surprised by the proposal, Matías reflected on the idea and found in it a way to express gratitude mixed with the pain they felt, recognizing Belinda's care for Valeria despite the tortuous path that had led them to this point. Together, they decided to organize a brief ceremony in memory of Belinda, a moment to acknowledge her passing and express gratitude for the life she had. In a way, return to them. The decision did not dismiss what she had done, but it reflected their desire to look beyond the pain and resentment in search of a resolution that would bring peace. The planned ceremony, conducted with respect and dignity, would serve not only as a farewell to Belinda, but also as a recognition of her care and love for Valeria, as well as honoring all the struggles she had faced in life. The tumultuous journey that Dalia, Matías, and Marisol faced together brought a new understanding and appreciation for each other's lives. Valeria's unexpected arrival, followed by the presumed loss and miraculous return, profoundly transformed the home and hearts of all involved. Valeria grew up in an environment filled with love and care, surrounded not only by her biological parents, but also by Marisol, whose presence became indispensable to the family. Over time, Marisol's ambitions for a life of wealth and luxury were replaced by a deeper appreciation for people and shared moments. Valeria's case had revealed the fragility of life and the value of the bonds that unite people. Marisol saw in the renewed happiness of the family that true wealth is not found in material possessions, but in love and shared moments with those we hold dear. These reflections led Marisol to a deeper appreciation of life, recognizing that true joy lies in the ability to love and be loved, in the presence and well-being of those who mean the world to us. Thus, motivated by the profound love and gratitude she felt for the family that embraced her and for the girl who inspired her, Marisol decided to dedicate herself fully to Valeria's well-being and education. With a renewed commitment, she sought to improve her knowledge, to become an effective tutor for Valeria, guiding her from infancy through her early years of learning. Her efforts to contribute meaningfully to Valeria's development were recognized by Dalia and Matías, who, seeing the positive impact of Marisol on their daughter's life, decided to increase her salary. This gesture, though not requested, reflected the deep appreciation and respect they had for Marisol. With the salary increase, Marisol found herself in a more comfortable financial position, allowing her to send more money to her own family. This additional financial support helped with the costs of her younger sister's university education. As the years passed, Valeria's extraordinary story and her family's origins became part of the family lore. When the time came for Valeria to learn about Belinda and the unique circumstances of her beginning, It was approached with a mix of sensitivity and honesty. Belinda's memory, far from being forgotten, was preserved and honored, a testament to the power of compassion and forgiveness in the face of life's adversities. In the end, about 10 years later, Valeria's and her family's story remained a bright reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of hope and the possibility of renewal. Belinda's memory, far from being a dark secret in their lives, was shown as an example of unconditional love and sacrifice, an essential part of the family's history that would continue to be told with honor and respect. Thus, surrounded by the warmth of their union and the memories of those who played crucial roles in their lives, Dalia, Matías, Marisol, and Valeria found lasting happiness, a testimony to the indomitable power of the human spirit to seek light even in the deepest darkness. Together, they moved forward, not just surviving, but thriving, weaving a story of love and hope that would remain with them forever. If you have enjoyed this narration, I invite you to show your support by liking and becoming part of our community by subscribing. Your support is the strength that motivates us to continue publishing wonderful stories almost every day. Stay with us so you don't miss the next exceptional story that will be available on your screen. We greatly value your support. See you soon.